might have come close to exposing the core.
If that's true, then we came very close to the China syndrome.
The China syndrome. Hey everyone, Charlie here from the Atomic Age, and today I'm looking at the China syndrome. I've never seen it before, but I have heard of it. I know the China syndrome is supposed to be something about a melted down core going all the way to China, but we'll get into that later. But I do know that this movie was released within 2 weeks of the 3 Mile Island accident happening, which is very interesting. These two events kind of had a big impact on nuclear reactors here in the United States, but I'll get into that later in the video. So I'm a nuclear shipping package engineer, and I love movies, so being able to watch movies that incorporate nuclear themes is something I love doing. I just love seeing how filmmakers try to incorporate that into their movie. It can often be comical. But I mostly use this series as a way to elaborate on nuclear concepts or give some context for why things are the way they are, or just better explain something related to nuclear power. So I'm pretty, I don't want to say forgiving of movies, but I enjoy enjoying movies. So if I notice something that's inaccurate, I can be like, that's not right, but then I can move along and carry on with the movie. Sometimes it's a deal breaker, most often it's not, but we'll get into that as the video progresses here. If you're a reactor operator or engineer, please let me know your impressions of the movie below. Really be curious to hear what your take on it is as well. And I always want to make sure I'm getting things right, so if you think I got anything wrong or any kind of correction or supplementary info you'd like to add, leave it in the comments below and I might address it in my corrections video later. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into the China syndrome.
Playback, please.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Come on, camera 2, we need to clear bars.
Come on, this is only 40 seconds long. Let's hustle up.
There we go, camera 2 is clear.
Where the hell is
And
George?
V3 is clear.
He's taking a leak. What do you want me to tell
This
you?
is freaking chaotic, dude.
You know, this is
Oh,
a 2.5-minute
live
spot.
video
Maggie's not gonna
production.
hold in a
Good
stack
God.
shot.
Is that Neville Longbottom?
We're going to focus on nuclear power, that almost magical transformation of matter into energy that the experts tell us may be our best shot at energy self-sufficient. Shit.
What happened? What?
Despite the error, yes. I still hold true today. Not necessarily in this form of power plant anymore.
We call it the core. Around the core, of course, is water. Water is used as a coolant.
Right, let's get a reaction shot on
Oh
Kimberly.
my god, look how young Michael Douglas is, wow.
Real good.
Who made it?
How old is this plant?
We went online 4 years ago. Took over 12 years to build.
For me, being in the nuclear industry for 7 years, it's kind of crazy to hear about a new power plant having been only online for 4 years. Ever since 3 Mile Island, which is... This movie came out in proximity to 3 Mile Island. It doesn't really have anything to do with 3 Mile Island. And that was really kind of like the death knell for water reactors in the United States. And what I mean is by water reactors, it's a reactor that's both moderated by water and cooled by water. There really haven't been any reactors that have come online or started construction since 3 Mile Island. So that's not to say this downturn was because of 3 Mile Island or this movie. The nuclear industry was in a general downturn by the time 3 Mile Island and this movie came out. And this is because power plants are starting getting more and more expensive as more and more regulatory requirements were placed on the plants. That's not here to say whether that's good or bad, it's just, it is what it is. Another issue was that in the decades prior, it was foreseen that the energy demand in the United States would climb much more than it had by this point in the late 70s. So more expensive power plants to build combined with not as increased energy demand means that the demand for new reactors basically went away. And that's evidenced by the fact that only 2 new reactors are about to come online in the United States since the 70s, basically. There may have been some reactors that came online in the 80s, but no real construction of reactors, except for these 2 new ones, had really started since the 70s. It's a crazy thing to hear, talking about a reactor having just come online in the past 4 years. Old power plants like Ventana did indeed take a long time to build. Around 10 to 12 years is a good mark for that, and that is because all of these old water reactors in the United States, pressurized water reactors or boiling water reactors like Ventana, were all custom designed and built. There was no single one design. Even within a company that designed and commissioned multiple reactors, In the US right now, there's a big push moving towards fast reactors, which don't use water. That's a discussion for another day. These plants are going for a modular design, which means you build them in a factory somewhere, and then they get shipped out and more or less plug and play into the place it's going. It's going to be a little more complicated than that. Much more standardized than it used to be with these old water plants that are fully custom built in the location that they are sited.
God, they're all so young.
Well, it's a young industry. I see an older
This is
guy.
also crazy for me to see young people in a young nuclear industry.
This looks like the only...
Very independent.
Whoa. That is not good.
What was that?
Felt like an earthquake.
What the hell?
If that's not an earthquake, I would be shitting my pants right now. Even if it were an earthquake, I'd be shitting my pants, but not being an earthquake is more of a danger. Plants are designed to handle earthquakes in whichever area they're built. But I have a feeling that wasn't an earthquake.
What do we got? Turbine Trip?
Yeah.
Okay, turbine trip. Something in the automatic system did not like what it saw and turned off the turbine. Sometimes people call it a turbine in the nuclear industry. And that would necessitate scramming the reactor because now there's no way to like remove heat from it. The turbine is kind of needed when the reactor is running to be able to remove the heat that's generated. It gets turned to electricity. So if that's not running, you can't get the heat out of the operating reactor, so you gotta shut it off. So they should mention something here about the reactor scramming.
Load rejection turbine trip.
Reactor scram.
Yep, there it is, reactor
Okay,
scram.
we're off the line.
So if you have to shut a reactor off quickly, usually in an emergency type situation, it's called scramming the reactor. And when that happens, all the control rods are inserted in. A nuclear reaction requires neutrons flying around to split atoms and to generate heat. So if you want that to stop, you put in control rods. They're made of neutron absorbers, so they suck up all the neutrons in the core and shut down the reaction. It's not really known where the term scram came from. Sometimes it's capitalized as if it were an acronym. It's just one of those peculiarities of language as to where this term came from, but it's stuck and it's always called scram, at least here in the English-speaking world. Whoa. Things shaking, not good.
Are you within limits, Ted?
Yeah, it's gonna level out okay.
System
That's
status.
Wilford Brimley. Holy shit.
Diabetes.
Just take it easy. There's nothing to worry about.
High water level in the reactor.
Now he mentioned high water in the core. This is a boiling water reactor because you have that. In a boiling water reactor, you got water and steam in the same spot, but in the pressurized water reactor, it's all water. All right, so if we look at the diagram here from the Ventana plant of the PWR, which Ventana is not, it is not a pressurized water reactor, it is a boiling water reactor. The pressurized water reactor has 3 loops. The first loop goes to the core, and this loop remains liquid water. It stays liquid water. It's water at high temperature and pressure, so approximately 600 Fahrenheit, 300 Celsius, 2500 to 3000 psi. And then it interfaces here in this structure called the steam generator, which is interfacing with the second loop. So the heat of the first loop is transferred to the second loop, and that turns the water in the second loop into steam, which then goes to the turbine, which expands the steam, and by expanding it, you can extract energy from it. So that spins the turbine, and you can convert that to electricity by spinning a generator. And then the secondary loop interfaces here with the third loop in the condenser. And what this does is that it takes your secondary loop water that's been expanded to steam, condenses it back to water, and that goes back to the steam generator to then again interface with the primary loop. This third loop is the environment, so it's like a river or lake or a cooling tower. So now let's come to the boiling water reactor. Looking at this first loop here, it also includes the core, but there's no steam generator. The first loop contains the turbine, so water is actually boiling inside the core, turning from liquid water to steam. And to accomplish this, the water is not at as high of a pressure or temperature. So as you can perhaps imagine, this all sounds very complicated with the boiling water reactor. Because water is boiling in the core, coolant is switching from liquid to gas. So yeah, boiling water reactor, water level, very important.
Hey, Jack.
What?
Look at this water level indicator. Water level's low.
This says it's high.
This is where some of the issues come into play, because you can't look into the reactor to see what's happening. It's just too severe an environment to have a camera like that in there. temperatures are insane, pressures are insane. This is like similar to what was happening with 3 Mile Island, like where sensors are telling you one thing, but you're thinking another thing is happening. But here they also have sensors in disagreement. So is a sensor failed or what's going on?
Jesus Christ.
Oh, the old tap.
God damn it.
Ted, we may uncover the core.
Alright, so see, with that water level, he thought it was high. They were trying to get water out of the reactor, but now they're super low. You need to get water in because it's going to get hot. Water has to stay in there and be pumped through it even when it's shut off to remove decay heat. There is an insane amount of radioactivity inside a reactor after it's been turned on, and that's from all the atoms that have been split. And the reactor is good at stopping radiation. When you stop these subatomic particles, you get heat. It's no different than applying the brakes in your car. Right when you've shut off a reactor, it's still putting out about 6% of its rated thermal load in decay heat. So if this thing were running at full power, somewhere around 3,000 megawatts thermal, you'd expect it to be putting out about 200 megawatts of heat just from radioactive decay. That's a lot of heat, and it has to be managed. So you have to continually pump water through the core to remove that heat. Even if you don't uncover the reactor, if you've lost all cooling through the reactor, which is a very rare scenario, it will eventually still heat up through all that water and get hot enough to the point where it could melt down. But nuclear reactors have several different types of emergency cooling systems called the emergency core cooling system. This is crazy, dude. Damn, dude, this is like so suspenseful for me.
I can't give you very much.
God, we're losing it.
It's a back pressure. Now, what the hell happened to the high pressure coolant injection?
You mentioned high pressure coolant injection. That's supposed to be part of the emergency core cooling system. So a reactor's under immense pressure. So to be able to get water into it, you have to be able to match and exceed that pressure. So it would have to be a high pressure system, because you couldn't just use a garden hose to get water into a reactor. The water would just come out of the hose because the pressure differential would want to push the water that way. So you'd have to have some system to have water at high pressure to be able to push it into the reactor to cool it.
Now, what the hell happened to the high pressure coolant injection? Hipsy's valved out for maintenance, Jack.
Okay, so another piece of this puzzle. He said the HPSI valve is down for maintenance. The high pressure coolant injection valve. I would think off the bat that would mean you couldn't run the reactor if you can't use the HPSI. That sounds absurd to me. Oh my god, the tension is freaking palpable.
We've got Dipsy, Jack!
After they've ended the high pressure coolant of the reactor, now you can shoot in this low pressure stuff. Those guys don't have the best nervous faces. I am on edge right now, dude. This is intense. Very good filmmaking for the suspense here.
It's coming up.
Ooh.
It looks like a great hard news story, but we don't know exactly what it is. It's totally irresponsible to go on the air without checking the facts.
But the fact is that it happened.
Wow.
We were there. You've
Make
got...
sure and move it, you guys.
Not what I expected.
Kimberly, you better hurry.
I'm assuming that's like the producer. Not what I expected him to say there.
Yeah.
Unless he's in on it. That chart back there looks like a chart of like the radionuclides. That all the isotopes that exist in nature. I don't know if it is, but we'll pop it up here on the screen here and see if it is. It just made me think of that.
These plants are designed for the possibility of an accident. Every conceivable thing that could ever go wrong has been taken into consideration. Why, hell, we've got a quality control that's only equaled by NASA.
Quality assurance.
I have to get up in the morning. I'm covering the migration of the gray whale at my live at noon spot tomorrow from Point Magoo.
What?
A whale, Beaumont, a whale.
Oh, we're in the containment building, okay. I assume right there in the foreground that's the spent fuel pool / loading pool, storage pool. Alright, so Jack here is heading into the containment building to inspect things after the transient. Now the containment building, of course, is where the reactor is located, but it's also where the spent fuel pool is located. Once you take a fuel assembly out of a reactor, it's still going to be incredibly hot, so you have to keep it in a pool of water that moves water around constantly to remove the heat from those fuel assemblies. But a nuclear plant only needs new fuel every 18 to 24 months. It's crazy. About 1/3 of the assemblies get switched out every loading time. So in that 18 to 24 month time, you can run continuously. The fuel does not need to be changed out any more frequently than that. And that's traditionally what made nuclear so attractive, is how cheap the fuel was. For something like a coal plant or a gas plant, most of the cost of that is the fuel, because you have to truck that in continuously. Whereas with the nuclear plant, fuel was the cheapest thing. That's what made it so that the trade-off was that it was really expensive to build the plant up front, but then the cheap fuel cost is what would make it lucrative over the long term. A lot of that has been impacted by the fracking boom here in the United States to make natural gas a lot cheaper, which is why we're getting the move away from water reactors finally. Market forces are pushing the nuclear industry into the development of fast reactors, which is very exciting. What? Was that some water leak?
What a crap. You know, I told him we'd be back online by 3 o'clock. Look, I gotta run. I'll see you later.
So, good quality assurance starts from the top. Everyone in the organization has to abide by it. You can't just tell your underlings to do it and expect them to follow it. So you have to set that example, and this guy is not setting the example of good quality assurance. It's almost like playing out like an instructional video. It's like, we're driven by deadlines. Get it back running.
If that's true, then we came very close to the China syndrome.
The China syndrome?
If the core is exposed, the fuel heats beyond core heat tolerance in a matter of minutes. Nothing can stop it.
The fire has been called off, my friend.
Well, at least it wasn't saying it would cause a 3 megaton explosion. Okay, so he's talking about core exposure and then the China syndrome. I never heard the term China syndrome in my education. It's what we're talking about here is a meltdown, which is the worst case scenario for these kinds of reactors, water-based reactors. He's making it sound like as if the moment some number of fuel rods in the core, they're not immersed in water anymore, that they will instantly melt. This is not true. It will take some time for them to heat up and begin melting. Let's talk about defense in depth. So nuclear power plants are designed so there's multiple layers of redundancy for every possible situation. All right, so let's say the coolant all goes away. This can happen in what's called a loss of coolant accident. One of the coolant pipes from those earlier diagrams could rupture and release all the coolant. What happens then? Well, that's where we have the emergency core cooling system, and that was mentioned earlier with the high pressure coolant injection and low pressure coolant injection. And that system in and of itself also has several redundancies too. So let's assume that fails and the core cannot be cooled. It will melt. You'll get your melted down fuel slag at the bottom of your reactor pressure vessel here. The reactor pressure vessel is a very robust structure. It is 6 to 12 inches thick, 15 to 30 centimeters, and it is made of solid steel. That has a lot of thermal capacity and resistance to melting. So the molten core can sit on the bottom of that reactor vessel for some amount of time before even melting through it. We have real world evidence for this in the 3 Mile Island accident of 1979, which, believe it or not, happened 13 days after this movie was released in theaters. In 3 Mile Island, long story short, about half of one of the cores melted down at 3 Mile Island and sat in the reactor vessel uncooled for about 6 hours and did not melt through the reactor vessel. So there's some real world example of how meltdown can affect these types of water reactors here. All right, so now let's say it has melted through the reactor vessel. It is now inside the containment building, which, as you may have seen before, is that dome over a reactor. This does not just extend into the air, it is underneath as well. It is a full encapsulation of the reactor. And this is very thick concrete, on the order of several feet. I'll put an exact figure below. A lot of concrete. This molten core will now spread out to some extent on the containment floor. As an aside, why does a thin layer of ice melt relatively quickly and an ice cube or a good solid chunk of ice take a long time to melt? It has to do with the ratio of surface area to volume. So some kind of ice cube has a small amount of surface area compared to volume. And what that means is there's not as many avenues for heat to escape. If you have concrete or asphalt covered in a thin layer of ice, there's a lot of surface area compared to volume. There's a lot of place for heat to escape. So when this molten reactor core hits the bottom of the containment, it will spread out to some extent, so it'll be able to better release heat. And it will also, it's also been mixed with the materials of the fuel assembly in the core. It's melted through the reactor pressure vessels, so some amount of steel from that has now mixed with the melted down fuel. And now it will melt and combine with this very thick containment building to dilute even more and spread out. So that's even more likely chance that it will all start cooling down, or that this will all take long enough for someone to come in and start cooling it down with water. So let's step through it. We've had to assume that all the coolant disappears, the emergency core cooling system fails, it melts through the pressure vessel, and it melts through the containment building. It has to get through 4 different phases to leave the containment building. So this is all to say that this is going to take a very long time. It's not going to happen in a vacuum, and it's not unstoppable. This is a very, very, very worst case scenario accident. Now, Fukushima did have some meltdowns. That fuel was allowed to proceed pretty much uncontrolled, and as far as we know, did not penetrate those containment buildings. Just to be fair, I'm not trying to excuse Fukushima, but there's a whole set of circumstances that go along with that accident that were very abnormal. This Ventana incident is a lot different than Fukushima. There's not a huge tsunami that's going to come wipe out some vital system, so this has all been a very long-winded way to say that it's going to take a very long time for fuel to melt through the containment building, if it ever will, before it cools down and solidifies. Having said all that, it makes for good stakes in the movie.
Come on, Jack. No contractor can possibly supply every stupid document the government calls for. So they didn't.
They damn well can.
So what? We gotta get back online this afternoon. The company is losing $500,000 a day. Start her up, Jack.
This guy is this evil plant manager is, yeah, he's more or less evil. It is comical how much he wants to not care about safety. It's very ripe for the cigarette smoking producer. We gotta start up today, Jack. Start that reactor. What you gonna do, head operator guy? What you gonna do?
We expect to be back on the grid in a couple of hours.
Come on. If Jack's his name, he should be able to go above cigar smoking guy and work his way up to the management chain to try and find someone who'll listen to him. And if you can't, you can call the NRC directly and report a safety concern. Because that's a huge problem. Some contractor fabricated all those inspection records on a pump of the reactor. That is an enormous problem. And it most certainly should warrant not starting the reactor.
Follow normal sequence for rod withdrawal up to the top of the SRM.
I've lost some respect for him. Looks like they're doing radio inspection of these pipes. Basically just like taking x-rays of the pipes looking for defects. So this kind of falls into the situation of where you've made something from an engineering perspective. How do you check it? Well, the easiest way would be to cut it open and be like, it's all good, and then you're like, oh crap, I just cut it open. It's useless now. So you do what's called a NDE, non-destructive examination. So there's just various ways to check that something was done right. Either using, like for like a weld, you can use like a leak testing thing to see if any kind of like dye penetrant gets through the weld. Or with this, they're doing like a radiograph, so they're using basically like an X-ray to try and scan it, see if there's any imperfections. So that's a big component of quality assurance in the nuclear field, is non-destructive examination.
The plant may not be safe.
The plant is perfectly safe.
Listen to me, Royce. We may
If it's safe, prove it.
and I don't have time to go through every one of those.
That's all it boils down to.
X-rays. Now, how many and which ones?
I don't remember.
There's plenty more where those came from.
Oh, don't be childish.
It just threw it onto the fire.
I'm going to the NRC.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Get off.
Think it over.
Do it.
You don't know what
Do
you're
it.
talking about. Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You better think that over. Wait a minute. God damn it. They have their own security men.
What is happening?
Hey, Redmond. Yeah? We've got a problem.
I'm
Oh
sorry.
my god. Yeah, we'll see about that. Yeah. Alright, respect has been not completely renewed in head operator guy, but restored to. A lot of it has been restored.
Richard, I want that goddamn film. Kiss my ass.
You get your film, you'll get time to change the water or feed the fish. They'll just know.
That is a
Doctor
single
offers
man's dinner, I will
classes
say
as
that
well
right
as
now.
house calls ranging from ick, fin con-
Oh, that's a nice shot. I like that.
The NRC has held 60 licensing hearings to date, and not once has a license been refused.
Yeah, because you get the person applying it to fix it. Once they fix the issues in the license, you let them get the power plant. The NRC is not in the business of just denying power plant applications to be, yeah, you can't build a plant here. They're there to facilitate the safe operation of nuclear power plants. Oh, we're in a canyon, so we're gonna get run off the road. Yay! I was doing yay for them throwing a car off the cliff from like a movie production standpoint, not hoping he would get killed. That's not why I said yay.
What?
You got to testify. Tell them what you told us last night.
I understand.
It's kind of weird they're trying to bring this up at the licensing application for another power plant. Like, that's not... It makes for a good show in the movie, but no, you would just go straight to the NRC about it. You wouldn't bring it up at some other plant's public comment meeting. Oh boy. It's like training day. Oh my god, look how empty that highway is. I imagine it's not that empty anymore.
All right, take it up to 93% of the research. Right.
What you gonna do? You gotta hit the scram button? What are you gonna do? Whoa.
Okay, leave it there, Jim.
Was not expecting that. Wow, this is taking a turn I was not expecting. Now they're gonna like attack his credibility and everything like that. Like, oh jeez.
You don't tell him to knock it off right now. I'm gonna open a relief valve and flood the containment area. God help you and your company. Is that understood?
Okay, so like he mentioned like flooding the containment building with the relief valve. So I'm assuming like pour some of the coolant from the reactor loop into the containment building. It's designed to do that, but you don't want that to happen. It's gonna contaminate the entire building. It's not something you can just quickly recover from.
Jack, I got Kimberly Wells here.
Bring her down. We're alone.
I mean, I got respect for the operator guy, but he's like, something snapped. He's got a gun. It's like, he's unstable.
Our only other choice is to try to scram the plant. That should distract him long enough for us to get in there.
They're talking about scramming the reactor on him to try and remove his power from the situation. He could still, like, drain the coolant to the containment building. I don't see what scramming would have anything to do with it. Okay, I'm thinking this is going to be a setup for... they're going to scram the reactor, and it's going to send the surge to the pump, and then the pump's going to rupture or something, is what I'm predicting is going to happen from this point. I really like this how they have this setup where they can, like, see each other but can't talk to each other. Okay, I think they're just setting up the shutdown thing as just the stakes for the scene. I think that's fine. I mean, just, like, off the top of my head, I can't think of what a better stake would be. But it wouldn't make a difference. That coolant would still be radioactive. At least in like these time frames we're talking about here. Once you shut the reactor down, of course, the radioactivity of the coolant will decay.
You realize that's exactly what Goodell spooked about. A scram.
For Christ's sake, whose side do you want, Spindler?
There you go. They're setting it up.
Give him a hand.
Dude, keep talking, Wilford Brimley. Keep talking. This is one of those situations where I know there's not much time left in the movie, so I'm fairly certain they're not going to pull off this scram and just like end the movie on a on a loss of cooling accident and a meltdown of the reactor, so this is going to somehow be figured out.
Have you thought about what you're going to say?
No, I hadn't gotten that far.
See, that's the reactor water level. Well, in the water level, there is a pen, and the pen's stuck.
Yeah, we're getting bogged down in technicalities here.
Feed water from entering the system. In
Are you going to kill him on live TV?
That water level was that cool, but that's not...
I was going to say, the accident's not the issue at hand here. Get to the welds.
Oh, no. No.
No! Oh, my God!
Cut him off. We're losing picture.
Picture, come on.
Dude, that's the look you want, Mr. Power Plant guy? You want that look?
God, help me.
Oh my god, they shot a guy running away. Jesus. Oh my god. Okay, so my prediction was wrong. They're gonna pop this sucker. Did they save it? Jesus. Okay, yeah, so
It's over.
the pump went crazy, but the reactor shut down before.
Stable.
But that pump's f***ed.
Cap, basically what happened at about 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah, see, it's just what I wanted. Yeah.
Gun, an employee of the.
I'd just like to stress that the public was never in any danger at any time.
Oh, they cut the footage when the alarm klaxon was going off. That's not a good look.
The man was emotionally disturbed.
What did he say to you, Mr. Spindler?
Spindler, come on.
Said he thought this plant ought to be shut down.
Mr. Gibson, if there's nothing to hide, let him speak.
Come on,
Whose
Ted,
place
let's
is
go.
it?
No, come on.
Let's
Jack Adele was my best friend. He wasn't a loony.
Hey, there you go, Spindler.
I mean, he wouldn't have done what he did if there wasn't some to it. Jack Adele, he wasn't that kind of guy. There's going to be an investigation this time.
And I'm convinced that what happened tonight was not the act of a drunk. Jack Adele was about to present evidence that this plant should be shut down.
She did a hell of a good job.
She did.
I must say I'm not surprised.
Oh, but now we can get some lasagna. Wait, did I miss something there? That's it? That's how it ends? Oh my god. Oh, that's a weird ending. What is that supposed to be like? Oh, this could happen at any power plant any day. No music either. Huh. I don't think I've ever seen credits without music. Yeah, I don't know what to say at the moment. I got like all the mixed emotions at the moment right now to that ending. I mean, the message I'm getting is that anytime someone from a power plant interfaces with the public, it's a bold-faced lie. And it was 50 times worse than what they said. Ending was a little weird, but I like the movie in general. The guy was trying to show... He was trying to, you know, get across the fact that there's a safety issue, and that's supposed to be the #1 priority. That's supposed to be respected at all levels of an organization. A nuclear organization respects safety. Anyone can speak up. He should be able to stop it because he has that power to control the reactor. He has the power to stop the reactor. God, credits were so short back in the day. It's already over. Nowadays, they have like 500 bajillion special effects artists. All right, so I'm recording this outro, I don't know, a week or two after having watched the movie. That ending really caught me off guard. I thought it was very anticlimactic, but really just like the last 10 or 15 seconds of it. I guess I interpret the movie, since it started and ended with like the shot from that newsroom, that they're kind of trying to depict this as like an average day in the life of a nuclear power plant, which could be further from the truth, but that's how I interpreted it. My girlfriend didn't really interpret the movie as being anti-nuclear, but more anti-corruption. I thought you made a good point there, but I also, going on that vein, I think the kind of interpreted the movie as portraying corruption and nuclear power as going hand in hand. But yeah, it wasn't really as blatantly anti-nuclear as I may have been led to believe. I thought there was actually a lot of good technical stuff in there. I thought it was a reasonably accurate movie. I'm not a guy to nitpick a movie to death. I don't like cinema sins. So I'm never going to be that kind of guy. I enjoy movies for what they are. It can be hard to explain sometimes when and why you're fine with technical inconsistencies in some movies, but not in others. I'll just say that for me, it's whenever it becomes distracting, when it makes you stop and think about it. Maybe sometimes if they're trying to over-explain something. But overall, I thought the movie was a good thriller movie. I thought the performances were good, and it was very suspenseful. The accident in the beginning I thought was very suspenseful. The ending part with Jack Lemmon getting shot wasn't as suspenseful for me. That's because it was, I've seen that movie, quote unquote. But the nuclear accident portrayal in the beginning I thought was pretty good. That's actually based on a real incident. I didn't really look into that one too much to see the differences between that incident and the movie. That could be a curious video to do in the future. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Remember, if you got any, thought I got anything wrong, like to comment, elaborate on something further, please leave it in the comments below. Might address it in my future corrections video. And if you like what you saw, please consider supporting me on Patreon or the thanks down here underneath the YouTube video, which is like a new tipping feature that YouTube has rolled out. I don't run ads, so I appreciate any support you guys can offer over at Patreon. We got polls, full-length uncut reactions, early access. So go check it out, see if it's something you'd like to do. Remember, if you can't support, please just keep watching. I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.